This is the second year that we've celebrated Juneteenth here. It's going to be a little non-traditional because both myself, who will introduce the guest speaker, our view of Juneteenth is not very conventional. So, we're going to give you, some things to think about. Just a couple things to kind of set the tone for Juneteenth. As most of you know, it only became a holiday in the last couple of years during the Biden administration. And there's been a movement for some time to make this a national holiday. The problem with Juneteenth as a national holiday for someone like me, and for those of you who don't know me, I'm Zak Kondo. I teach history and black studies here. Been here for 20 years. My colleague, Professor Joan Hackett, is also here. Okay, thank you. So anyway, the thing about Juneteenth is that there are a lot of holidays that I think are justified in the United States dealing with African people. Juneteenth might not be one of them. That's just, and that's just me. So last year when we were here, I just put together just a couple things, and I don't want to take too much of his time, so I'm just going to kind of breeze through them real quickly. Probably not even all of them. Most of you know that the general thesis behind it is that the war was over, but on the island off of Texas, there were still enslaved people there, and the word never got through. And so a Union general comes through named Granger, and he reads the Emancipation Proclamation. And of course, the whole storyline revolves around the notion that the Emancipation Proclamation ended slavery, which is a myth in and of itself. And then those Africans got the word on Juneteenth, which is June 18th. And so that's where the Juneteenth celebration comes from. Slavery was over, Africans we didn't know, and Juneteenth we knew. So then it became a celebration. The only way it works is if the Emancipation Proclamation freed anybody. And technically, the Emancipation Proclamation, which took effect on January 1st, 1863, freed a donut. Zero. Nada. And so if you don't have that, then Juneteenth basically has no value. But let's go beyond that though. A couple other things. Another problem with the Juneteenth thing is that it ignores what Africans did, what we did to destroy slavery. Once white people started killing each other, slavery was doomed. And it was doomed because we, as Africans, we stopped cooperating. We took over plantations. Tens of thousands left plantations, looking for loved ones or going and living with the original people, what this society called Indians. Slavery was never to be what it was because of the things that Africans did, not some piece of paper that Lincoln signed. But again, for Juneteenth to work, it freed us when he signed it, and that's absurd. And then keep this in mind too. When Juneteenth happened, which was June 1865, several states were still practicing slavery. And not just the states that you think, not just the southern states. New Jersey was still practicing slavery up until the late 1860s. New Jersey is not considered a slave state. Slavery should have ended in New Jersey decades before. So see, these are some of the myths, if you will, that just make this kind of ridiculous. How about this? Texas, where all of this supposedly originates, Texas did not end slavery until 1874. Do you understand what I'm saying to you? But yet we're celebrating Juneteenth, which is 1865. So you got these types of gaps. And then I think the final thing that I will say is this. If you study slavery in the United States, when you create a cutoff date, you play games. And what I mean by that is this. Most people are not aware, but slavery shifted from the predominantly deep South to the Midwest after the Civil War. And what would happen is this, and this was happening as late as the 19-teens. So you're talking about 40 years after the Civil War. African people in Alabama, Georgia, deep South states, we would be walking down the streets and we would be kidnapped. And we would be taken to the Midwest, states like Illinois, states like Iowa, states like Indiana. And they would enslave us on these large farms. And we got some crazy cases. We got cases in which 40 years later, one of the persons that had been kidnapped and spent 40 years enslaved in Indiana was then driven back to the same street that they kidnapped him from. We got cases like that. By the way, there's a book, if you're interested. It's by Pete Carroll. It's called Shadows of Slavery. It talks about this type of stuff. So my point is that even trying to put a closure to slavery, and then the final point is this. States like Mississippi and Alabama, they created a new form of slavery after the original form of slavery ended by manipulating the penal systems. And what that means is this. Say the year is 1905. No, hell no. We can go 1960. The year is 1960. I get arrested for stealing a candy bar in a store. They take me to jail. They didn't take me to court. And the judge orders me to 7 years of hard labor. What that means is they're going to put me on a plantation. What state? Did I make up a state? Okay, in Mississippi. I stole a candy bar in Mississippi. They would put me on a plantation for 7 years. And I would do hard labor for that particular plantation. See, these are the games that we play when we talk about history and slavery in the United States. But it's a nice little story that ended in the Civil War, Emancipation Proclamation, Juneteenth, and then going about your business. But we play silly ass games. So we don't have time for silly games. So I brought one of my brothers here.
No, it's an honor to be here. I appreciate the invitation. In particular, as long as I've been in this area and teaching at Morgan, I've never been on this campus, so it's an honor to be here and to be at the invitation of what is truly a legendary scholar. I don't even know to what extent some of the young folks might be aware of that, but we may have only met in 2010 or around then, but I had been learning indirectly from you for a long time. In our book, A Lie of Reinvention, Correcting Manning Marable's Malcolm X, features an interview about Baba Zak's work, which is itself legendary in terms of research into the assassination of Malcolm X. Which in many ways dovetails with what I'm going to have to say today. I'll keep it relatively short, I think, and then I think we'll have a few minutes at least for some Q&A. Again, my name is Jared Ball. It's an honor to be here. I am a professor of Africana and Media Studies at Morgan State. I'm collecting media because I'm a low-level YouTuber with a podcast called I Mix What I Like, which is itself a play on the emancipatory journalism of Steve Biko, the legendary South African or Azanian freedom fighter who produced media encouraging Black consciousness and radical organization under, at one point, journalism that he wrote called I Write What I Like. And because some years ago I was, I'm from the hip hop generation and I was into mixtapes and I was doing mixtape radio, started calling it I Mix What I Like. It is also a pun on the fact that I am mixed, so, but you know, so all of that. But as I used to joke, mixed but not confused. So you know, let's you know, we can maybe come back to that as well. So as I said, I've been doing media for a long time, in particular, in not only doing, but research around unsanctioned forms of media. And that's sort of where I want to start today in terms of unsanctioned ideas and unsanctioned thought. And I was reminded of an interview I did about 10 years ago with the late Harry Jones, H-A-R-I Jones, who used to be the curator of the African American Civil War Museum in DC. And an interview I did with him and Dr. Gerald Horne, who is still here and very prolific in his authorship of books. He's probably written a book, another one in the time it's taken me to introduce myself here today. Very prolific. And each made a point that I would like to build from briefly here today. First, Jones made an immediate correction to the lie about the lie that is about Juneteenth. This idea that ignorant slaves in Texas finally got word and when it was recognized in Texas that it was being brought back into the Union, as Jones put, under the purview of the Emancipation Proclamation and the proclamation being enforced. In other words, so as Baba Zak just pointed out, the proclamation itself was mythological. It did not free anyone in the states that had seceded, and was more of a military tactic, if anything else, and a bit of propaganda, which I think fits nicely into what I have come to see Juneteenth as largely being. And it was enforced, I also think importantly, as Jones pointed out, by military force, that it took the Union Army and the gun to enforce even a false notion of emancipation on African people in Texas or throughout the South. Of course, the Emancipation Proclamation and then the eventual 13th Amendment would make room for slavery, the emancipation in only condemning in only freeing those who had seceded, and then later the 13th Amendment that gave a provision for enslavement if you were first convicted of a crime. All of this is part of an apparatus that has been mythologized into what we're supposed to accept today as a form of freedom. And then again, this speaks to the question of what is freedom, and can it in fact be freedom if it is given and not taken? And this speaks to the second point, one raised by Dr. Horne in this interview that I'm referencing from about 10 years ago. Horne pointed out that the belated enforcement of Lincoln's proclamation was not an emancipation as we would have then or conceive of it today by most Africans, but one of propaganda and tactics waged by Lincoln and the state to manipulate African people into supporting the Union, and this is how it should be understood today, part of a narrative war, or as Professor Dylan Rodriguez has said recently, part of a lexical warfare, that is a linguistic, symbolic, semiotic warfare, and that functions as counterinsurgency and the maintenance of colonialism within this settler colony. So maybe we can come back to this, but if we understand, as it has been said of Africans in this country from day one, literally in the newspapers and elsewhere, that black people are insurgents from the perspective of the state. That is a group of potentially threatening, terroristic, deserving of surveillance and all forms of hostility population. The state has been waging a form of counterinsurgency against black people in the United States, just as it has been doing that against other colonized people outside of the United States, or as Malcolm X used to say, the police do here locally what the military does internationally. So within that context, this is how I see the holiday. That is Juneteenth and really any other one. That is, in this context, one of settler colonialism and capitalism, all holidays, museums, celebrity, all forms of popularity, all function to organize memory, to shape our identity, and to form our public opinion, and to govern our behavior. Juneteenth, a date in history born of enslavement and forcibly imposed from freedom itself organized for capitalist expansion and exploitation, is now used to market literal goods and immaterial ideas of liberty. In one of his extended lectures on the history of Juneteenth, Harry Jones talked about the black-led, conservative, neoliberal, nonprofit call for the holiday that overlapped with the very white supremacist notion that Baba Zak referenced indirectly a moment ago, expressed very directly by William E. Woodward, who extolled the virtue of Juneteenth, himself as a South Carolinian white supremacist, as signifying the first time in history a people were made free without their involvement at all. In other words, before it became a holiday in 2021, the history of trying to produce it as a holiday was meant to commemorate the fact that black people were given freedom by the United States, not through their own hand, not through their own struggle, not through their own initiative, but by the beneficence of this great white colonial master. So even a white supremacist was saying long ago, let's make it a national holiday. This should be seen as a second form of independence, second to the 4th of July, which is itself, of course, propaganda with its own mythology meant to convince even white people of a version of history that it actually abuses them, even if they don't always become aware of it. So my point is that even the pre-2021 desire to make this a holiday, led by a largely black conservative effort, overlaps with the overtly white supremacist goal of creating this false notion of a freedom that really appeases the ongoing inequality and exploitation and hostility that black people continue to suffer, and that allows for us to end up with a world where, as was reported recently, 800 people in this country are worth $6.2 trillion. I just keep wanting to say that and let it sink in. 800 people worth $6.2 trillion. All of that can only exist. It can't be defended militarily. It can only exist through a massive, constant manipulation of our public opinion. So this holiday itself was initiated a year after George Floyd was murdered, and people began to, and after which people began to show some signs of rebellion. Joe Biden signed off on the new holiday as if in some way to make up for the fact that he, like his predecessor and now successor, and also his former boss, and per the work of Margaret Kimberly, all presidents had done next to nothing to help black people, and in fact presided over the persistent anti-black hostilities that led to Floyd's murder in the first place. So we have to always remember that. Part of the state's response to all of the uprising we saw after Floyd's killing, the state responded with a massive propaganda campaign led by corporations and a $50 billion war chest to re-promote the market fundamentalist model of liberation. That is, promote black capitalism, small businesses, black banking, shopping, with healthy doses of black celebrity, performance, and inclusivity at the level of pop culture and corporate boardrooms. This way, boycotts and campaigns surrounding DEI can take center stage as preferred methods of rebellion. Add to that the reactionary politics of America only and disunity among so many that's being encouraged within black populations in this country and other segments of the African community in this country and other oppressed or colonized communities, and the confused history and delayed reach of a controlled and imposed freedom that this holiday represents, and now everything starts to make sense. We can see today the limitations of this kind of freedom. The material conditions of black people are one thing, and they continue to worsen. Black wealth will be zero by 2050. 15 cents on the dollar is a recent book by Ebony Reed and Louis Story talked about black people earning. 15 cents on the white dollar in 2025. The lack of health care, insufficient health care, the over-dependence on federal jobs, which is now going to come back with a backlash now that this current administration is wiping them out. Black people will suffer at greater levels, particularly in this state. And the backlash of the propaganda and the myth behind that will be that we have to support the next Democratic Party nominee who will be seen as the salvation and the solution, which is what they told us Biden was after Trump won the first time, which is what they told us Obama was after Bush won a couple times, which is what they told me in the first and last time I voted for a Democrat in 1992 under Bill Clinton. They told me, oh, this is going to get us to save us from the horrors of Reagan. But the fragility of even these levels of freedom currently on display under new forms of assault by current administration should be reminders to us of that sanctioned holidays are propaganda. And we need to look at the unsanctioned traditions that have truly advanced humanity this far. If there's to be a commemoration of any sort of holiday formation, my preference is Black August. If for no other reason, the state can't stand Black August or the politics associated with George Jackson and the Attica uprisings and the long Attica revolt, as Dr. Orisami Burton talks about. And the traditions of socialism and communism and radical pan-africanism and radical Black revolutionary nationalism and armed struggle and all of those traditions that the state willfully suppresses at every turn. We have to recognize that that is what's happening as we're being encouraged through massive levels of again, propaganda to support this concept of Juneteenth, as if it was meant to signify a delayed but now has arriven freedom, or now has arrived freedom. We don't need more holidays. What we need is more paid vacation, higher wages to cover those increased paid days off. We need more radical forms of political organization, a redistribution of the now they said about $27 trillion that this country generates every year in GDP that we all help create every day. Just showing up today, we've driven, we used electricity, we've gone online, we bought a coffee, we did something that generates all this wealth that ends up in the hands of 800 people worth $6 trillion. Even at Morgan State, where we don't have the biggest athletic stadium, I tell people all the time, just put 800 people by themselves in Hughes Stadium. Even in that stadium, you wouldn't even see them. Put 800 people in M&T Stadium, you wouldn't even know they're there. And then just remember, $6.2 trillion. And then look at that check. I just got paid yesterday. No, today. Today's Wednesday, right? Yeah, look at that check. Gone. They used to talk about make it rain, and my joke was like, I could maybe make it mist. Sprinkle. Maybe a cloud might form in the corner of an otherwise sunny blue sky. Make it rain. Yeah, right. Say it again? Yeah. Man, to this day, when my daughters and I drive by and every time they see a house, they see these sometimes big, beautiful houses, and you can see their eyes I tell them, don't you dare get jealous. Those are thieves. Traitors. Living off the reward of their treachery. Don't you dare. Just lastly, we need land redistribution, free health care, free housing, an immediate release of the remaining political prisoners like Mumia Abu-Jamal. We need a release of all nonviolent offenders. I remember it used to be reported that 80% of people in prison are there for nonviolent drug-related offenses. Immediately they should be sent home, and if necessary, into some sort of therapeutic treatment or something like that and then let's see what's left of this mass incarceration system if you only have the actual murderers and rapists and the actual violent criminals. The system will collapse, and all this furniture, I don't know, do you all get, because at Morgan, prison furniture, we might have to pay for it. Have to get made somewhere else, or pay those people an actual wage and some health care. So really, I would want to stop there and open it up for some comments and questions. I just wanted to call into question what is encouraged when we are encouraged into all forms of sponsored, sanctioned forms of celebration. While I was waiting, I did a quick search through the national media for the word Juneteenth for just the last 7 days. And it's not, I'm not claiming some scientific methodology here, but it's just riddled with sales, promotions, you have a day off, go hang out here, and to the extent there's any connection to a discussion, as far as I saw, to the history of enslavement or the condition of African people, it was again part of that fantasy, the mythology that we started off with, that we're supposed to see what this is today as the most high level advanced, what we could expect, freedom, even to the point where we don't even, to Fanon's point, dream properly of ending this colonial relationship. We fantasize that we can participate in it, and that's what we're encouraged at most to do. So, you know, in terms of media, I've reduced some higher level analysis to something I call the Vernon philosophy of black media avoidance. It's a tribute to an old friend of mine who used to deliver pizzas with me. And years ago, he said, black man, he said, I'm never gonna see another movie with black people in it because we always look bad. And at the time, I was like, I couldn't conceive of it. You know, I was like, wait, no more Denzel movies, no more, you really not gonna watch, you know, whoever? And the joke was, you know, 30 years later and a whole bunch of student debt, and I realized he was right. And that it's a similar argument to this point around sanctioned holidays. We should intellectually boycott and be critical of all media that targets us, especially when we like it. Because much like what I'm arguing is the case with these holidays, it is specifically designed to, much like food is manufactured, to target our intellectual taste buds to make us happy, to enjoy, and then subconsciously think that we can become part of this without having to change it, without having to make any radical adjustments. We can get ours. Yeah, go ahead. My answer is never really sufficient here, but the only solution I think we have is what I was trying to point to here. Radical political organization. We have to find time outside of our already filled, stressed lives to support and join organizations. Find ways, if for no other reason, those organizations and spaces, even just intellectually, help us find freedom from dominant narratives where we can have political education, have different kinds of conversation. We have to find ways to support alternative media, to create a different media environment for ourselves. But part of my argument around the Vernon philosophy is just that. The media system in this society is so sophisticated and even as much as I hate it, it's so beautifully deployed on us that I don't argue that we should try to avoid it. I argue we should try to engage it with a certain kind of consciousness and clarity. And so if we're doing that in the context of political organization, if we're doing that in the context of study groups, alternative political sphere, public spheres, media spaces and stuff like that, then we can, to a certain extent, protect ourselves, prepare ourselves, come up with different ideas and solutions, see again, the fragility in the analysis of those dominant narratives. You can start to see the flaws, you can see the repetition, you can see the claims, you can see the way, and then start to, yeah. But I say that as somebody who has been, I admit, politically frustrated. It's been difficult to find ways to engage and to build organization, to stay sustained as a sustained active member of organizations, to push those organizations to challenging in more, you know. But that's the only way I think that we have any hope in this. Oh, capitalism, I mean, in many ways drives this narrative. I mean, this is, so part of what I made reference to in those brief comments was, I don't know if folks remember or caught this, but after George Floyd was killed and those protests erupted, part of the response was literally a $50 billion corporate campaign where corporate America started funding, what I noticed, what they were funding a lot of were nonprofits targeting black communities around financial literacy, small business loans and stuff like that. In other words, sprinkling money around the community to get people to calm down and return back safely to the political plantation. So capitalism, that was one way capitalism did it. The other way capitalism did it was to engage in DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion, which has been falsely promoted, much like Juneteenth, as something liberatory for black people. But one of the things I do co-host a show called Saturdays with Renee, which is led by Renee Johnston, a Newark-based, that's right, I forgot the connection, a Newark-based activist. And one of the things that she sort of revealed in her research was that, for instance, Target, that's getting a lot of attention with these boycotts right now, if you look carefully, under DEI, Target Corporation hired fewer black people than before DEI was developed. The only increase under DEI was a 3% increase on the board of directors of Target of black members of the board. In other words, much like much of the capitalist approach and black capitalist approach to liberation, only a handful of black bourgeois middle class executives benefited from the struggle of the black masses. Meanwhile, black workers didn't improve at all, and we're not seeing an increase under DEI in wages or hiring or anything. So, but the narrative became, we're here for you. My favorite picture, I should frame it and like make it a mural. It was so abusively beautiful. Was when Jamie Dimon of JP Morgan Chase took a knee in front of his vaults. Remember when everybody was taking knees after George Floyd? He put his fist up. He put on the kente cloth scarf and took a knee in front of his JP Morgan Chase vaults. And I always took that, I thought that was such a beautiful, because he was saying, you're not getting any of this. I'll take a knee, you could get the kente cloth, I'll give you we'll do all of that. I'll sprinkle some money on a nonprofit to teach you how to start a checking account, but you're not getting anywhere near this right here. And part of it in many ways worked. That with a lack of organization, various other, probably, nefarious things among the state, that largely worked to suppress and get everybody back. And then the work that I do, that I'm most focused on now, is looking at how this black capitalist narrative has been rebranded and reimposed as a solution for black inequality. And that's why you have so many podcasts and YouTube channels and celebrities and what did Snoop say the other day when he was criticized for DJing at Trump's inauguration? He said, well, what is it? What are you going to judge me? He said, 30 for 30. I DJ, you going to judge me for DJing for 30 minutes when for 30 years I've been rocking for the community? And then he acknowledged that he did the gig for his friend David Sachs, who's a big-time private equity cryptocurrency pusher, who just made billions convincing Trump to buy a Bitcoin reserve. In other words, I didn't do that well. In other words, Snoop, I've been arguing for a long time. My joke has been Snoop, like other celebrities, his celebrity has only been preserved so he would be in place to take these anti-black positions politically at the right time. So he would be in position with all that celebrity to tell people, we don't need to take a knee with Colin Kaepernick. I'm with Jay-Z, we just need ownership in the NFL, right? Then he could say, we don't need any sort of black radical approach to electoral politics. We don't need an alternative party or to join alternative parties. We need to just side with either Trump or Kamala, but ultimately my friend of 15 years, as he said, David Sachs, and promote this cryptocurrency, which came back through cryptoganda to be promoted to black people at higher levels, because that's why black people by percentage are the highest investors in crypto, despite having nothing for it. Because all these celebrities that are working for David Sachs and Peter Thiel and Donald Trump come back for that solution without proper political organization, say, I can invest my way to freedom. All that to say is that's how capitalism can do it. That's what capitalism, as Kwame Ture used to say, capitalism makes us think we are thinking when we are merely reacting to stimuli. Such a beautiful line. We just out here, it makes us think we are thinking and we're merely reacting to stimuli. So they're like, people start to bubble up, wait a minute, George Floyd got killed, I want to rebel. Nah, you just need to start a business, invest in some Bitcoin, circulate your dollar. That mythology, by the way, that's been debunked too. I don't know if we get time for that, but that, please, 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 don't take my word for it. But the research has been done. The circulating dollar mythology is got to be. We got to get that out of here. But don't take my word for it. Maybe we have time. In that book, by the way, 15 cents on the dollar, Louise Story and Ebony Reed trace the history of that myth and show it to be just that, mythological. Anyway, sorry. But all of these mythologies are promoted instead of what should be the unsanctioned ideas: radical organization, redistribution, revolutionary nationalism. Alternative approaches to electoral politics. That's anyway, I think I lost the plot there somewhere, but yeah. No, go ahead. To be spoiling these celebrations with stories with the nightmares that we've either experienced or know about that are still ongoing. Again, the conditions of people in the Eastern Shore, the conditions of people right here in Baltimore, the conditions of people, throughout the country and beyond, are direct remnants of all of this, and we're being encouraged to celebrate it, and I'm not with it. So yeah, I think you should continue to raise up that story. That's the whole point. The trauma is still going on. And in some ways, it's unhealable trauma. Like, I don't know. And I'm not the one to listen to for this part in particular, because I am trifling in that and I even suffer personally in my own life for this stuff, because I don't want to heal from stuff like that. I want to stay angry. Like, I may be smiling with you right now because we're in a friendly space and I'm a guest, but I'm furious daily, by the minute. So, and I love it. Whenever I start to get happy and I'm starting to have too much fun, and I'm looking at my beautiful children because our lives are relatively easy, and I start to sink in and look at them, I get a jolt to be like, hold up, because it's literally just them. Even in our own family, if you look right behind, like one house over, one generation over, people are struggling. It's a mess out here. So yeah, I'm with it. I appreciate that. We should be sharing our trauma. I used to say that, like, we should stop lying to each other about our paychecks. All of that. Like, we all broke. I don't have, like, everybody's, like, all the Instagram lying we do. Everybody's only smiling on their pages. We should be up there telling them stories. I'm miserable because I'm remembering my family member getting stolen. I'm remembering my land getting stolen. I'm remembering that story, and I remember that story, and remember that cousin told me that, and that aunt told me that, and that grandparent told me that, or I just read this about someone else. Just stay pissed. Like anger is an underrated emotion, and as far as I'm concerned. George Jackson one of my heroes had this great line that something that I butcher now, but he had this beautiful statement about, I used to love people, he said. I used to, I know life, we're only here temporarily. We should be here to glorify the body, the mind, the soul. We should just be having a blast out here. He said, I began to hate when I realized the mystification was interjected intentionally. And that's how I feel. Like, wait a minute. Like, when you're growing up, you see, like, okay, everything's not really great out here. But you can't figure out, and then you're like, wait a minute. And then you keep being told all the stories. No. it's well, it's a variety of, it's your fault that you're not richer. It's your community that's holding you back. It's your drunk uncle and your, whoever's holding, it's you who, and then you realize, hold up, that's not, wait a minute. And then you're like, wait a minute. That's not only not what's happening, but you created this situation on purpose? And you maintain this on purpose? Nah, son. Nah, man. I'm not trying to be happy. I'm trying to turn tables over. We should be up here in fury, like, constantly. Like, that's why I keep, and then Forbes put it in our, Forbes magazine put it in, I took it personally. I know they're not talking to me, they don't know who I am, but I took it personally. You gonna put in print that 800 people are worth $6 trillion? You gonna tell me? I'll end on this one. And, oh no, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, how do you continue to keep going? You said earlier it's frustrating about some things, but what is that thing? Even like with Professor Kondo, how do you just keep going to say somebody's got to listen and hear me and make a change?
I don't know. What's that? I don't know. It's. I would like to be pious enough to say that I'm just moved by the principle for the struggle for freedom. But I think, honestly, I'm just personally upset at what's happened just to me. Just to me, and my life has been relatively easy, and I have suffered enough. And then I found out it was done on purpose? So I'm not that good a person. Like, I'm pissed because of what's been done to me. And then I even entered the struggle because I was trying to figure out what is happening to me. Then I figured out, I started to learn, oh, wait a minute, because this is happening to, well, my father's community in a different way than my mother's. But I started to figure out, okay, wait a minute. My father's people are treated way worse than my mother's people. Hold up, what's going on here? How did that work? How did that work? I love my mother, but she and her people are not that special that they deserve all of this. And then my father and his people are not that bad that they don't deserve any of it. And then I found out, oh, it's not because black people are inferior and melanin comes with some deficiency and black people are culturally bad, all that nonsense we get. It's not that. Oh, word. I started reading his work and other people, oh, African people did this and people did, and there was a whole state structure that created this. And then I went and studied the media system in this country. The best part about getting a PhD in that was you learned this was all done on purpose. They say it. Mass communication was created by the military and the business community specifically to, as they said after World War II, reconquer America. Why? Because after World War II, everybody said, hold up. Government can take over, manage our salary, produce plenty for the war, get everybody a job. And the private business community said, oh, hell no, fix that. Unions? So, no, I know we got to wrap. Look, I definitely appreciate the invitation. Thank you all very much. Yeah, if nothing else, please appreciate the anger and the frustration. Don't let people tell you that it's all harmful for you. It is fuel for something that can, and as Fred Hampton used to say, to you I say peace, only if you're willing to fight for it. And thank you very much for this invitation. Thank you. One of my jokes has become that I think we have a civilizational crisis of methodology, that we don't, one of I always end my semester with asking the students, how do you know what you know and why do you like what you like? A professor I used to have that we didn't even like each other, but I've always appreciated it. He used to say, you have to interrogate your preferences. So I've reduced that and made it a softer version of that to this, how do you know what you know and why do you like what you like? You have to be able to constantly be asking those questions. And especially when you like something, you should be more critical of that. How did that, the way I think of it is, how did this system figure out a way to make me like something? You know, years ago, I know I'm going on a tangent, forgive me for that. Years ago, I was talking about this. I heard this, one of my favorite lectures that I've ever heard was some random socialist lecture on the political economy of Doritos. And the reason that I liked it so much is that his point was, one of the points that the speaker was making was that if you understand, he's like, think of the way they manufacture Doritos. Everything is done with specific intent to capture our five senses. They're specifically manufactured with a colorful orange to pop. The sound of the crunch is specifically designed so that it crunches a certain way. When we're always licking our fingers at the end, they've done that on purpose to make us have a lingering engagement with the food. Well, yeah, I mean, before you even get to that's the higher level of psychological warfare. I mean, that's the whole point. And by the way, when you look at psychological warfare, what mass comm teaches you is that the exact same tactics, literally to sell you soap, are used to sell you your identity, your religion, your nationality, your concept of sex and gender, and all of that. All of that is manufactured in the same way they would get us to buy a brand of shoe. And so yeah, so AI, I do think it's important always to remember, technology does not change social relationships. It always enhances them. So if you have a hostile relationship with a community or a society and they add a new technology to it, the propaganda is used to convince us that we can use it to free ourselves, and it's always being used to recapture us. So the internet is military technology, yet we're told it's supposed to have freed us and leveled the playing field, and I can blog and you can blog, so we can all be free. AI is now being promoted in certain circles as, get in now, black people, because this is the technology that will free you. No. AI is taking existing consciousness and knowledge, putting it in a high speed computing so they can regurgitate it back to us when we ask it to. That's it. It's not elevating or improving our relationship. So if this is a white supremacist, colonial, patriarchal, anti-black society, AI is going to take on that same. I asked AI about my own work, and it beautifully summarized what I've been saying. But that's all it did. I don't know if it's a direct backlash. The backlash has been going on for hundreds of years. It's a new form of the backlash to get people back in line. By the way, we should also remember Amazon's #1 source of revenue is not shopping, consumption. It's surveillance and data that they sell to CIA and intelligence community, right? They use the same cloud servers. So let's start with that. That's what it's here for. To get us our goods and TV shows quickly is, at this point, I mean, that's, yeah, it's like a side hustle. It's like, it's like, let them focus on getting their new, pair of shoes, and then they won't focus on the fact that we've encaptured them in this whole digital surveillance landscape. I'm not adding on to anything really. Just that of course AI is going to be used to get rid of labor, expand the already existing consciousness and worldview and make it more readily available and ubiquitous. So that's why we have to, again, come back to organization and those beautifully unsanctioned ideas that AI is never going to tell you about, because it don't know. Anybody else? Comments, questions, queries, conundrums, catechisms, cacophony, calumny? I'm easy. I mean, I mix what I like at gmail.com. I mix what I like at gmail.com is always. I mix what I like is just what I'm not hard. I'm not hard to find.
And don't forget, tell them the Black Liberation.
So yeah, so I have my own I Mix What I Like show, but then I'm also part of the Black Liberation Media Collective. So there's a whole YouTube channel called Black Liberation Media that has my show and a whole bunch of others from the broader African world radical community. So yeah, please tap in, support, change your media environment a little bit, you know. And thank you all very much. It's been great. Thank you. Thank you. I mix what I like, what I like, what I like, what I like, what I like.